to the right music channel. We got a real type of thing going down, getting down. We got a whole lot of rhythm going around. Welcome, everybody. Good to be here with you guys on the Wednesday Night Hump, the Upstairs to the Right podcast. I don't know what number this one is. I'm sure we're getting definitely in the double digits. Maybe starting to get up there in the triple digits with these. But thank you so much for signing up, for joining in, for listening in, for taking the time to do so. Is always greatly appreciated. Let me get myself situated here. Scott, Maddie, how are you guys doing? Good to have you gentlemen here. Well, yeah, man. Mr. Watson in the house. Mr. Watson, did you get that CD in the mail? I'm curious. Let me know. I want to ask you that as soon as you showed up. Ben Allmark in the house. Hey, everybody's showing up. Thank you guys. Always such a good thing to have you guys here. Really, really a great pleasure to have my crew here on a Wednesday night. I'm sure our week has been, well, it's been a week so far. But the fact that you could take a little bit of your time in the middle of it and spend it with me is really, really appreciated, guys. Not yet. It'll get here. All right, I'm anxious. First of all, I'm really anxious to hear to hear the feedback on how it sounds on your stereo system. I really would like to hear it on a good stereo system. Even a car stereo system would be nice. I mean, playing it back through the monitors that I mixed it through is kind of like, I don't know. It's not exciting. So let me know. Yeah, guys, I was reading Guitar World magazine as I normally do. And I just want to start out tonight by talking about Billy Corgan's guitar. 2 points. 2 points about it. The guitar that he was using during the two most seminal albums that came out of the Smashing Pumpkins turns out was a Eric Clapton American Player series, I believe. Let me check that. There's an Eric Clapton, American Fender's Strat Ultra. And if you remember, the Strat Ultras had a very interesting thing. To this day, they have an interesting thing to them. I think they discontinued those actually recently. Is they had lace sensors. And as I was reading that article, I said to myself, lace sensors. That rings a bell. I've never personally myself ever played a guitar that had lace sensors in it. On the Strat Ultra, it was just the same configuration on the Yamaha Pacifica, single, but grouped together, so it looked like a humbucker. And one of the things I do remember about lace sensor pickups is that they were the answer to the single coil hum that you got in most Strats. And other than that, I remember seeing them way back in maybe the late 80s, early 90s. That's how long those things have been around. It's been a long time. And I was reading this one guy because I was trying to refresh my memory about it. He about summed up my thoughts on them. I never played them myself, this guy wrote, but I remember seeing them in guitar magazines as a teenager in the 90s, yeah, and thinking they seemed douchey. It was pretty much based entirely on the promo pics of Eric Clapton wearing them, playing them while wearing a blazer. I think that was my conclusion on them as well. And it got me to thinking about pickups, and just indulge me, if you will. And one thing that I can say from that Yamaha Pacifica experience, it wasn't lace, obviously, they were ceramic pickups. It wasn't the $350 lace pickups, sensor pickups. But that single being compressed together to make a humbucker, it's lacking. And I'm sure that it sounds better with these lace pickups. So I'd like to hear from you guys out in the chat, just as startup talk, warm up conversation. If you ever played lace pickups, and what do you think? I mean, even better yet, you know, the bridge pickup on the American Ultra is that single configured into a humbucker. Um, being that between my true humbucker equipped Strat and that Yamaha Pacifica, I found it kind of lacking. I really don't know why that would be such a great advantage to have that. There's coil splitting things that you can do with that guitar. I understand, but I don't know. Just throwing it out there. Valve Selector, welcome to the chat, man. Welcome. Good to have you here. Is acoustic better than electric? Uh, I think it depends upon the production that you're doing, what you're trying to get across. I would not want to hear an electric guitar. Well, I guess that actually I was about to say I wouldn't want to hear electric guitar doing classical music, but I guess that's what Satriani mostly does most of the time anyway. Um, setting, man. That's my answer to that. Wow, depending on if you have electricity. Even better answer, Scott. Even more accurate answer. Maddie says those pickups are like $1,000 to buy now. Yeah, man, dig that. I remember them being about $350. So I don't doubt that they're $1,000 now. And I bet you that you're probably referring to those late 80s, early 90s first editions of those. Um, I believe that. You know, I it I've never played it. The one song that I know of that I can refer to that does feature them in a recording is Jeff Beck's "People Get Ready." Because Jeff Beck and Eric Clapton were really big promoters of those at the time. Billy Corgan, obviously, as well, but um, that's the one song. And I always found that sound to be very clean. Of course, it's been processed through the studio and that whatnot, but a little sterile, I guess is what I would say if that's what it is. Although I love the solo in that song. Um, I never liked them, but I am humbuckers for life. Yeah, again, like I said, I've got a humbucker quit Strat, which I thought was the best of both worlds. Well, welcome to you guys. Welcome to everybody in the chat. Cat's Music Journey. How you doing, sir? Are all those ones that Fender calls noiseless? Is this the same? They are noiseless. They are, but I don't think that they're the same ones that are being promoted as noiseless. I think these probably based on the same tech, but um, they were a step above in terms of noise canceling, of course, over what Fender was offering back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. And to me, boy, you think you get your head wrapped around the humbucker, pickup world, and then you start getting into strats and single coils, and it's man, I mean, I know that Prince played the noiseless set of the noiseless pickups in his strat, one of his strats towards the end. Um, so it was something that I don't think it was the same as the lace sensors though, but it's probably very similar. A lot of guys use those. Again, very expensive, and I think there's trade-offs. There's always got to be trade-offs. If you're trading off something for, to get that noise canceling, that hum canceling, that humbucker bucking, if you will, uh, then sonically there may be something there that may be lacking. I don't know. I haven't heard them, so I can't say. Maybe an example of that again, like I said, is Jeff Beck's "People Get Ready." I think after a while, a lot of players want a Strat that sounds like a Les Paul, so that makes sense, Mike. Yeah, there are purists out there like Jesse Johnson. He doesn't even want to touch your guitar if it's not all single coils. He doesn't consider anything that's not three single coils to be a Strat. He just doesn't. Um, and I can respect that. For me, it was the ergonomics. I like the ergonomics of the Strat, but I hated the single coil sound. And I figured that if you put a three switch in, and by the way, the three position switch that you got standard up until the mid 60s or early 70s on Strats, I think was the better design than the five position switch in terms of sound. Especially if you put a set of humbuckers in your Strat, then it really makes sense. Especially you don't lose anything with that. And the middle position is pretty nice. Mike, to your knowledge, has anyone tried making an optical guitar pickup? Yeah, I'm pretty sure of that. As a matter of fact, didn't I read something about that the other day? Let me check that. I believe I read an article, believe it or not, on that the other day. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. There is. Um, it's from a company. It looks like out of Sweden, and it looks like R2D2's ass. 'Cause it does. It looks like it's very droid looking. Optical transmission mode pickups are relatively simple designs, at least in theory, although magnetic pickups are even simpler. For an optical pickup, you need a source of light and a sensor on the opposite side of the string to watch the change of the shade. That's it. Yeah, dig that. So they're out there. Well, I haven't heard those either. It looks very interesting. I read an article on that. That's not the article that I read, but something similar to that a while back. Um, yeah, I grab about innovation with guitars. I think that there's innovation that's occurring, but I'm actually starting as I get older. I'm starting to change my opinion on that. That there isn't a, that no there it's untrue that there's no innovation. There is, but that innovation, in my opinion, is heading in a direction that's not very interesting to me personally. And I do believe that probably in the beginning, these things were pretty much well as good as they were going to get. That's my opinion on electric guitars and acoustics as well. Um, so there's that. I just thought that was interesting because pickups, it just blew my mind because when you start talking about um, single coil pickups, boy, man, the information to read on the different types of those, and now you got these optical pickups, these R2D2 pickups being thrown in the mix, and yeah, it's a lot. With an Opticell, that's wild. Yes, Maddie, with an Opticell. Yeah, it's crazy. It looks like a Swedish company has developed that, and they are humbucker. Well, actually, they look very similar to P90s, actually. So there's that. Tonight's going to be a. I'm not saying it's conspiracy theory rambling. I'm going to try to keep it as factual as possible. I started to get into my preamble. I believe in the last live stream that I did, I started talking a little bit about it as waiting for more people to join in the chat. But tonight I'm going to really get into it. I'm going to put my foot in it tonight because the more I sit and think about it, the more I'm stewing about something, guys. Something's got me kind of pissed, I guess is the word to use. And I'm the response that I'm seeing out there at our table, again, YouTube, the metaphor that YouTube's cafeteria at high school. This particular table has the guitar click, music instrument click. I'm not liking the response that I'm hearing regarding this subject. Agree, my guitar's been downhill since the 50s, recording since the 70s. Not ha ha. Like, yeah, no doubt about that, Maddie. That's really my opinion. The older I'm getting, it's going downhill because I was listening to the Ink Spots, I Only Have Eyes for You, and that is a far superior recording done on a 2 track, I do believe, you know, more than anything that I've heard today digitally. Just well balanced, just beautiful recording. Just and guitars. Don't even get me started. Well, I guess I should get started because that kind of is the subject of tonight's discussion. The original clapper, the OG clapper is in the house. How you doing, sir? Thank you so much, first of all, for taking time to watch and to chime in. You can't tell me that there has been a better show since Chappelle Show. Yeah, we're gonna miss that one. I missed that one. I I think when he went off air was the last time I really stopped looking at TV. I love the Ink Spots, dozens of songs with the exact same music. Yeah, yeah. Recording wise, no. I'm not hearing anything that has the warmth and the depth. Those guys understood warmth and depth, if anything. Those early engineers. Bosnia and Herzegovina, 1992. Let's not forget. Hello, American brother. Welcome to you, sir. Good to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time for tuning in. Mr. Muter's in the house as well. Hello, Hans. Good to have you guys. My European American and Newfoundland. Everywhere we're getting folks here. So good to have all you guys. Thank you so much. Yeah, you don't own your tools anymore. The software trap musicians fell into. Let's get into it. I'm pissed. I'm really am. I mean, but I'm not pissed at the situation. I'm pissed at the response that the situation is getting out there amongst at least casual observations on YouTube in the music sphere, the music instrument sphere, guitars, basses, amps, drums, drum machines, keyboards. Um, and I kind of want to tie it into even bigger. I want to frame it in a bigger picture because the music business, I've come to the conclusion, isn't breaking in one piece. It's showing cracks everywhere at once, over here, over here, over here, in different areas. And recently, native instruments uh, going under basically insolvency proceedings. Do I have that correct? Well, anyway, the proceedings that they're under um, basically means that a court is going to take a look at their assets, break it into pieces, the ones that are of any value, sell those off to the highest bidder in order to pay off any debts. And this bodes not too well for a lot of people who use native instruments, including myself, to produce music. But I don't think this is a software story. I don't want to make this about a software story per se. This again, in the bigger, broader sense tonight, I want to tie it into the music industry. Music industry. Um, Let me check here in the chat. Can I say a bad word on here? Nathan, go ahead. Does it start with an O? Yeah, man. Say a bad word. You're welcome. I mean, I I hope there's no kids watching this show. I hope not. um, because when you zoom out and see where we are right now with plugins, DAWs, streaming, companies collapsing, it looks a whole lot like what already, in my opinion, happened to artists over the last decade. We were heard it once, and now it's happening again. Is the theme of this is herding, herd, dependency, pull, and that seems to be the trend. Herd everybody onto a platform, create a dependency for that, and then pull that platform away. Now, that is the part that I'm going to discuss tonight. That sounds kind of conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat wearing kind of conversation, but it's not. And I can really demonstrate that if you again pull back and look at these things, like I always say, from 30,000 feet, then you can really see the whole lay of the land. And this pattern of herding, dependence, and then pulling um, really is so prevalent in so many parts of our life. When I really thought about it, it's not just with software, it goes to a lot of things. So they killed the distribution model. All those warehouses in LA that I used to go to, um, excuse me, guys, I'm drinking lemonade and didn't exactly strain the pits out. um, all those disappeared, and everyone was herded in as an artist and as a listener, consumer, into streaming. This is the future, we were told, and this is more equitable, more fair, and this will be better for the artist. And once we all got there, the rules changed. They changed the rules. Oh, we're not going to pay out everybody the way we said we were going to pay them. As a matter of fact, we're only going to pay out, the top, 10% of our earners here. Everybody else, your money's going to go into a pool that we're going to use, by the way, to pay the top 10% because we don't want our salaries going to those bastards and our bonuses. They changed the rules. Payouts shrank. Uh, Control disappeared. And suddenly there was no going back. There's no going back. You destroyed the physical distribution markets, and, that's what happened. And I think somebody famously said, it's a trap. Yes, Admiral Abgar, it is a trap indeed. And this trap, bear with me, goes into a lot of other venues as well. Music companion. I think if you look at the dependents, YouTube, Twitter, Hulu, and Pandora, which used to be free, good point, and made users dependent, I'm surprised MySpace didn't do it first. Well, that's the reason why MySpace went out of business, because they weren't operating under that model. Michael Watson says the industry has gotten too complicated. It was so easy in the 70s, 80s, just plug in an amp and a few pedals and play. Yeah. Speaking of that, DAWs, let's talk about those for a minute, which basically, in my opinion, is the new streaming. We didn't think of it for, well, this is cool. I can get that old, LA, 10 that I used to have a hardware version of. I used to use, I can get a software version of it. And that's great until they put a paywall up on it. And you couldn't access it anymore, even though you paid for it. Wave sale. They had a sale every week. If you think about waves, they were always on sale. And why were they always on sale? Well, first of all, maybe, how much is the value of software? Just by the way. And intrinsically. And also, it was just to hook as many people and to get as many dollars in as possible. And then to tell you and say, okay, you paid your $30 for this plugin, your $50 is $100 for this plug-in. It's yours for a lifetime guarantee. And of course, they put up a paywall and then made it impossible for you to access those, even though you paid for them. You know, that's a hurting. Again, hurting, dependency, and then pulling the rug. It works here too, doesn't it? One DOW, one plugin suite, one authorized system, one account. It's convenient until it isn't. You know, with my DAW that I used from the beginning, I was a Studio One user from day one because I hated Logic. And uh, even though I started out on Logic. Um, and then, of course, as you know, recently, Fender has rebranded that DAW, and any kind of future updates on the existing ones is out of the window. And if your entire workflow lives inside one company's ecosystem like that, they don't kind of need to ask you anymore. Hey guys, you think it'd be a good idea if we stopped the Studio One, we got rid of Personas and rebranded it to Fender and made it 99 bucks, even though you just paid 450 for our Pro Suite last week? You don't mind that, do you? It's no big deal. And what did we do? We said nothing. By the way, it was the streaming. We said nothing. Some artists, Metallica, Prince, other cats like that. Worse, Billy. Speaking of Smashing Pumpkins, Billy was talking about it, warning us, saying, "Hey, this is not good. They're hurting us here, and they're saying it's going to be all cake and ice cream on the other side, but it's not. It's not going to be punch and pie. It's going to be something worse." And they were correct. And in the case of software, I don't see any difference there. Um, I really don't. And I'll add my personal caveat to this that, you know, I'm done. I'm done. First, they came for my plugins, then they came in for my DAW. And what am I supposed to do with that? What am I supposed to think? What would anybody think? I heard some folks, well, maybe we'll give this Fender thing a try. I've been using it for so long, I'll just have to work it out. Hey, that's why I say they don't have to ask you anymore because you didn't say screw you. And by the way, we're going to put together a class action lawsuit against you and sue you in Delaware court. That's the right jurisdiction for this kind of thing. And we're going to take you to task for selling this product and then doing the switcheroo on it with zero, any kind of indication that you were going in this direction, selling this up to this point, knowing that this was a change out that you were planning on doing. That's what they did. Has anybody done that? No. No. Oh, maybe it'll be okay, but when I heard this one guy, well, when I open it up, it used to be, thrilling to me. The vibe used to be good because it was personas. I see that, and now I see Fender, and I think about guitars. You should think about the fact that they bent you over with no loop. That's what you should be thinking about. You know, Getting with waves. You know, how much friction can we apply before people give up and subscribe? In other words, that's what they were saying to me. They were saying, let's see how bad you want to get those plugins, that you paid for from us. Well, you got to do this and then go and put this doohickey in and do this, and then you got to subvert the iLock system. So you got to put this, and and they know, you know, that with cats like most people, we want to get things done in a relatively streamlined way. You create a lot of friction, uh, just as a tester. How much friction can we apply? Well, apparently they can apply a lot because people gave in and they subscribed. If you are a subscriber to Waves, and right now, and you were prior an owner of plugins that you purchased, then you are a complete fool. You're an idiot. You're a dupe, without any question. I'm sorry. There's just no other way to put it because, again, they bent you over, me over too. See, you know, once you start, trying to push my back, I'm gonna walk on. I'm not gonna let you be. I'm done. I'm out. I'm not going for that. And I do believe that a lot of people do. And that's just what blows my mind. Blows my mind. Um, I like Spotify for myself, but for the artist, it sucks. Yeah, for the artist, it's terrible. And even for yourself, because the thrill of walking into I don't know if you're old enough to know, or to walk into a physical music shop and to flip through racks of albums or CDs and to find something that you would not have found. Spotify can't give you that. It can't give you that experience. They can try to simulate it, but it's not that. Wave still is on sale, but I'll never go back. No, man. No. I will give Apple some credit for Logic, as it's buy it once and it's free upgrades. Yeah, I agree. Uh, it ended up in the end, Logic was the one that is going to be the winner. I think that, and it will continue to be. I think that there was a shot at second place for Personas Studio One, but I think that shot's gone out the window. Having one more however, one more dodgy move and I'll get a task cam. Yeah, there. No, man. No, I'm done. And I would, I don't know if you were buying them before, and I don't know what your situation with Waze, but I'm done with them personally. Like I said, I think it's foolish to deal with those guys because it's kind of icky. It's the vibe from what they did for me personally. I feel it was, yeah, icky. I guess that's the best word that I can come up with. Is anyone making new analog studio equipment? Yeah, man. Did you check out that Behringer is knocking it out the park with their copies of 80s analog stuff? They came out with the Juno 60 copy this week. A few months ago, they came out with the what was that drum machine that Prince used, the Lindrum copy, and I've heard them all, and they all sound on right on target, and they even look the part. They look exactly. So yeah, Behringer is knocking it out the park. I think Donner cheapo Chineseism makes 4 and 8 track modules. Yeah, Huge Stream pumping out analog. Yeah, that's a relief. Spotify is evil. Yeah, yeah. Listen, the founder and ex CEO of that company took all of that money that he made off the backs of artists. Again, like I said, if you guys don't know this, I'll point it out. And he is now investing that money into the arms industry. That's some Bond villain type shit. I'm gonna rip off all these musicians, big and small, and I'm gonna take all those billions of dollars that should have gone to them, that would have gone to them. I had nothing to do with it, you know. And now I'm going to take that money and I'm going to use it to fund making weapons to kill those same musicians that funded this. You read that any other way. If you have another way of looking at that, I would love to hear it from you because that's pretty much well the way I see it. That's the true spirit of rock and roll, Mike. Push bad on companies. Well, that's sex and drugs. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, push back on companies. Yeah, man. Oh no, I'm done with Waze forever. I'm in Apple. Oh yeah, yeah. I thought so. I thought we had that conversation about that, Maddie. Han says I have some Behringer synths, also Solina strings, which I had once. The original play pretty good sounding. Yeah. You know what I would love to have? Speaking of old hardware, is I would like to have an old Mellotron. You know, I actually have Mellotron samples. Speaking of name, from my native instruments sample pack that I used on the song. What did I use those on? Down the Rabbit Hole. Those are Mellotron string samples, and I just, yeah, I love that old analog sound. I love that stuff. I wish they would come out with that. Is the point of that story? Valve selector. Are getting big speakers necessarily better for quality? No, the size of the speakers has. If you're talking about for a studio setting, the size of the speakers has very little to do with it. It has to do with, because we used to use a speaker called Oratone, and Oratones were about this big, little cubes. No, it's about the quality is in, not equivalent to size. It's about the components used to make those speakers. um you know and Behringer is killing it, by the way. Yes, you're right, Matt. Yeah, that's my best answer to that. you know Native instruments entering into liquidation should scare people a lot more than it does. Not because they're bad, but they were considered to be safe. And this is where I'm going to take this into a different direction, tie it into the bigger picture. Um, Stability is an illusion in the software market. Say it again, stability is an illusion. You're paying, well, I was paying um, Native Instruments through their iLock system. Uh, and the guarantee that I was get, by the way, they put the iLock system in to avoid piracy, but now it's going to be, because it wasn't an open channel in order to access, and you had to go through their company iLock system, which will, by the way, uh, be defunct as soon as this hits the liquidation court. Then you're locked out. you know Stability is an illusion, and your tools can disappear without warning, literally overnight. Not because you did anything wrong, but because the business model failed. And this business model is failing. That's why you're seeing these companies, all of a sudden, you're hearing all of these software companies having issues. It's because in the music arena, it's because the business model is failing. And the music industry keeps pushing everyone into these points of failure. Streaming, point of failure for the average musician. Um, DAWs and software based tools, point of failure. Point of failure. Remember how I talked about how I don't use software based anything for recording guitars? It goes through a pedal board. It's either a mic'd amp or it's going through um, something in order to get that sound directly into my DAW. Um, and I did that because I saw software as being a point of failure, even then, because I thought to myself, how am I going to recreate this sound, this software? How can I recreate this sound, this tone, if it's a software based tone? Um, Best to get a pedal board that has, you know, its own points of failure, but not like software. Nobody's gonna, and I'm not gonna wake up tomorrow and I'm not gonna have access to my pedal board. I'll put it to you that way, or any hardware. And with the eye of performing it, if I performed it live, how could I reproduce it? With that kind of thinking, um, I doubt very many young people half my age think like that. So you don't recognize a point of failure because you don't have anything to offset or to teach you otherwise in the experience. They moved us into one platform for listening, one platform for creating, and one platform for monetizing. And when everything funnels into fewer and fewer hands like that, ladies and gentlemen, those cracks don't stay small, they spread. Especially when we get to the third part of that scenario. Remember, herd, dependency, pull the rug out from underneath you. When we get to the pull the rug out underneath you phase, which we're in right now, then the cracks spread and they become more obvious to see. What we're seeing right now isn't chaos, it's consolidation stress. We had this as a music business in the 1950s. We had this as a music business in the 1960s. We had this as a music business in the 1970s and 80s, and the 1990s, mid 95, 96, 96, getting to the point now where that consolidation down to fewer and fewer hands is showing the cracks of a bigger system that is being systematically destroyed. Systematically destroyed. Also, don't forget your 1O's update, easy from blowing out your software package as well. Oh yeah, your 1OS update. Yeah, dig that as well, man. You want to keep and if you don't, it's insane. The point of failures. I had that happen to me actually. Updated my OS and Studio One started acting really funky on me. Right in the middle of recording um, the first Asanoki album. I think if you go back to my Singapore videos, I might be talking about that. Did you ever own a Ormsby guitar? No, but I've seen them. When Native Instrument goes bankrupt, you can still play air guitar. It's true, Hans. They can't take that away from you. You can't take that away from me. You guys know that old song? You know, it's insane that these cracks are showing. Artists felt it first. Artists felt it first. Producers and engineers are now starting to feel it, obviously. Producers and engineers are obviously starting to really feel it. And creators are next on the list. You're going to start seeing cracks. Well, you are actually with YouTube, Twitter, you know, Instagram, Snapchat, all that stuff. The cracks are starting to show because the consolidation in the bigger market and the consolidation in the micro market, as far as the music as far as actually any industry is concerned at this point, because I could talk about other industries where this is occurring as well. We saw that with Live Nation and how they said we're going to be it. If you want to play, in a decent sized arena anywhere in the world in any country, you got to go through us. And I believe I read somewhere where they're building Live Nation stadiums. So they'll own the venues. So the artists, that's no longer going to be a place where they're going to walk away. I remember reading about Patti LaBelle said, if I go out there and sing, I want $50,000 cash when I walk off stage. See, that's not happening anymore. Live Nation is going to be, well, you owe us 50,000 cash before you walk off the stage, or we're taking all your equipment. How is that possible? I just sold out 5 nights. How am I in the red? Well, there's expenses here, but you guys own the place. You see how that works? It's just, and the cracks start showing when, of course, when that consolidation occurs. That consolidation is people getting bumped out to the point where where it's getting to where now is that you really got to be in the club, you know, if you want to make it in any even the meager way, even in the meager way that these big artists are are doing these days because they're not profiting themselves. Anything but music. The music gets your name out there so people who know who you are so that you can sell your perfume line, or something. That's really how it is because you're not making any money on the music side. And these cracks occurring are pretty obvious. Once you see the pattern, that's why I wanted to, when you see that, and again, try to think of other aspects and other places in your life. Cable TV. There's a good, example. When I was growing up, there was 4 TV stations: ABC, NBC, CBS, and whatever the heck was going on, Channel 13, which I guess was a local CBS affiliate. Used to watch Benny Hill at 11 o'clock. Love that show every now and every now and then, you'd see some boobies. It was funny. Yeah, good stuff. But that was it. Then cable came in. I remember, when cable first started, it was like a distorted screen that sometime you could see a little something. You're like, what is this? What a movie that, and you had to get a box to decode that signal. Pretty ingenious. That was Sigourney Weaver's father, by the way, who came up with that. And then fast forward to now, you got Netflix, HBO, cinema, not only that, and then all the other, billions and other channels that are available out there. That was a consolidation that went the other direction. And that's a funny one to end on tonight because it, even though it was an expansion out, it diluted the content in. Isn't that weird how there's the inward expansion with some things, but there's that outward expansion as well. But the same pattern still applies. Herd everybody off of terrestrial TV into digital TV and then into cable, and then cable into whatever, streaming, dependency at that point, and then pull the rug out. And pull the rug out in the case of that kind of streaming has been, well, we'll go $5.99 a month and we'll give you all the channels you want. $29.99 a month, we'll give you less channels than we gave you at $5.99. and, and if you sign up to HBO or Max, that's like 20, 15, 20 bucks a month, man, or I'm sorry, $50 a month. it can get up to. And if you have multiple stuff like that, it really, again, pulling the rug out from you, telling you it was going to be affordable, it wasn't, and the content is not better. The content is worse because of the outward expansion. The inward content got diluted and got worse because you had to have more content in order to feed that monkey. Music industry, interesting. There's more content. Of course, that outward expansion and the more content, and it's diluting the inner content as well because there's no gatekeepers. It's again, once you see that pattern, you can apply it in so many different ways. Hurting, dependency, pulling the rug out in various ways. Sometimes putting up a subscription paywall, sometimes upping the cost, like with Xbox. If you were an Xbox Gold member, that used to be $9.99 a month. Now I understand it's, like 30, $40 a month, and they're not giving you all the stuff that they used to. You know, again, guys, it's a hurting that's happening. We got 3 channels. I love watching Benny Hill. Yeah, man, you remember those days. We got 4 channels, and it was channel 13 in Los Angeles back in the 1970s that played Benny Hill. That opening, dun, 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 shows the Thames. And I loved Benny Hill. I thought he was a funny guy. He died in a small apartment, lived very frugally, but he was extremely rich, but he was extremely unhappy. He was an unhappy guy. He was something. But in any case, this hurting. The TV was there, man. If you bought a TV and you set up an antenna, I mean, well, when I lived in London, I had to pay for the license every month. And Japan, by the way, NHK also comes by and makes you pay a TV license. It's not as bad as it is in the UK though. But in the States, you didn't have to do any of that. If you bought a TV and you had an antenna, you were set. And no, you didn't have you had to, there was a program, a TV guide that you buy. It told you what was coming up, and you kind of, plan around that, plan accordingly. It's just gone downhill from there. Gone downhill from there. Phineas, how you doing? Yakety sax. Don't know what you're saying there, man. Could you give me a little context on that one? Good to see you, Phineas. How you doing, sir? Yeah, it's insane. And once you see that pattern, herding you, everybody, into this medium, this new medium that's going to be great for everybody, creating a dependency upon it, and then pulling the rug out. Then pulling the rug out. That was the that yeah, that's right. That was the name of that song. Yakety sax. No kidding. I didn't know that. I did not know that. That is a good little musical bit of him. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna look that up. Yeah, there it is. That's pretty funny. Released in 1963. That makes sense. Wow, that's so interesting. Um, just be aware of it, guys. I'm not we are getting set up in so many ways. And again, I'm done. I'm done. You know, I've written all that I'm going to write. I'm starting to get the feeling in my bones, but uh, at least for public consumption. But in the music medium and other mediums, no. But hardware hardware. Like I said, as long as you got electricity, that's a separate issue. But as Scott was pointing out in the beginning, but hardware would be, I wouldn't set up another studio unless it was hardware based. And that's just a fact. And I would really keep my eye on that hardware. And well, how many updates do I have to do this? How often, can it operate without an update? Can it operate if this company completely goes gone? Can this piece of equipment still operate? Um, those are some questions that I would be asking. But unfortunately, again, this hurting of the consumer into a smaller and smaller and smaller spot to the point where you don't have a choice anymore. You want to listen to music? Well, we're going to charge you whatever the hell we want to on Spotify. We're going to raise the prices, but we're going to lower the payouts. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. And nobody says anything because where do you take that to? Where there are, and then when we did take it to Congress. By the way, Spotify was taken to Congress, and Congress basically said, there's not really a whole hell of a lot we can do about this. It is what it is, which lets you know that the fix is in. Which again gets into why again in so many ways we're being hurted because it's I'll have him say it one more time before we go here. But I think, again, Admiral Akbar summed it up very well. It's a trap. It's a trap. Just like the Rebel Alliance, thought that they cruise in on the second Death Star, no problem. All they had to do is blow up the shield generator. Done deal. But it was a trap. I know I got to put $1 in the Star Wars jar, but again, it was a trap, and we are trapped and we're being set up for traps in so many different ways. And this one, if you step back and look at it again, you see that the music industry is collapsing. It's consolidating, and if you saw the Grammys from the other night, if you took the time to sit down and watch the Grammy show, or even the highlights, which I did, it was complete booty. Ass is not even the word that I'm not even gonna. Some older guys like me, I don't want to talk about the new music because it makes me seem like an oldie, for this, that. No, 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 no. I'm gonna call it out. It's complete booty, complete booty, complete. And you know, we're we are not going forward as far as that's concerned. Summoning the supernatural. What's up, bro? What's up to you, Summoning? Good to have you here. Scott says, Mike, do you know of a Japanese album cover that has a guy in a field sitting in a chair that's tipped on its side? The band's name starts with the. No, but I'll keep an eye out for that. That's definitely something I can keep an eye out for. If only the shields covered the generators. Well, that's the thing. That had a big deflector dish that was aimed up towards the second Death Star that was creating the shielding for that Death Star because the superstructure wasn't complete, so they couldn't. The shield delivery wasn't coming to the following Monday, and the invasion was happening. That Friday. So big mix up there. I seem to recall that story. So if only the Death Star had its shields, I think would probably be the best thing. Then it had been a whole different story. But in any case, guys, traps. Admiral Akbar, he thought he was going to glide right in there, but no, it was a trap. You thought you were going to sit there with your Spotify and think that you're going to enjoy your music that's been brought to you off the backbone of a lot of artists who are literally starving, um, and think that it's going to work out for you down the line. Guess again. So, again, as a reminder, it's one of the reasons I was convinced by you guys to do physical media. That's why I came out with my CD. You can go over to my Bandcamp and take a look at the second Asanoki album, which is now available in physical media, and pick up a copy if you want to support this channel. I appreciate it. See how I slid that in there, guys? Pretty smooth, huh? Klingons. No, we're talking about, you can't confuse Star Trek and Star Wars. Those are two completely different. Although I did read a really super nerdy story once about what happened if the Enterprise somehow was transported to the Star Wars universe. And the end of the conclusion was that the Enterprise, one starship, would beat the entire Imperial Navy because the armament was a lot stronger on the Enterprise than photon torpedoes are stronger than whatever torpedoes they use in Star Wars. Anyway, yeah. So thank you, Scott. You know, just think about it, guys. I was pissed when I got started. I thought I was going to be a lot more pissed than I am now. I thought I would get into a lot more dark areas about the music industry and exactly where this hurting is going to, but I didn't. Actually, I kept it pretty factual based and relatively sane. I'm surprised at myself. But I thought that this would be a discussion that we should have. And, I vote with my wallet and everything else. You screw me one time, I'm done. I'm serious. As a friend, I'll be your friend hard. I'll swim through the Ganges for you with a nipple cut. But screw me one time, we're done. And that goes as well in business. And I just won't have it. And waves and native instruments and personas, they can all go to, HE double toothpicks as far as I'm concerned, because it, again, it was a trap. It was a money trap, certainly for me. When I think about the money that I spent at both of those cut waves and native instruments, I'm pissed. Well, now I'm pissed again because that's money that you know that I could use in a whole lot of other places. However, that being said, while I was recording, I was able to use those things. I didn't use any Waves plugins after the first Asanoki album. The second Asanoki album is done completely without Waves plugins. One of the reasons why I like that album in itself. But I did get my money's worth, I do feel, out of the plugins that I did get. However, I should still have them. I wasn't renting them, I bought them. Anyway. All right, guys. I think that's enough for now. You guys rock. Um, I will be back here on Sunday for Sunday at Mike's podcast. I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to tune in. Being Wednesday night, I'm going to cut it short because I got to get up tomorrow morning and do my thing. Enjoyed having you guys here. Please take time to hit that link that Scott put up there if you are interested in looking at a physical CD, buying that, or listening to any of my music. It is available free there for you to listen to as well. So please enjoy that. You guys take care and have a good one. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.